The time has come again, everyone. Q time, that is. 2v8 is back once more, so I figured I'd take the opportunity to get some thoughts I've had about it off my mind. The last time I covered this mode was when the first iteration came out, and unfortunately, that video is now lost media for the rest of you. But to give a brief summary of my thoughts back then, I genuinely thought 2v8 version 1 was DBD at its finest. Originally, you had a choice between Trapper, Wraith, Billy, Nurse, and Huntress for killers. And I know only having 5 killers seems insane nowadays, since we're about to have our 41st by the time this video comes out, but in reality, there weren't just 5 killers. You're playing with a teammate, dummy, which means there were actually 10 possible killer combos, and you were encouraged to experiment with each of them thanks to each killer's unique team skill. Trapper would give himself and his teammate a massive haste boost when setting traps, and, inherently could set traps around the map that could help out his teammate. Wraith gave his teammate the undetectable effect while he was cloaked. Hillbilly could mark survivors with the exposed status effect whenever he sprinted past them, which supplemented his lack of an inherent insta-down in this mode by giving it to his teammate, which was nice. Nurse would gain an additional blink when near her teammate, which boosted her mobility and lethality while encouraging her to stick near her teammate to activate their skills. And Huntress would apply aura reading to any survivors she hit, which was nice for her since she could line up follow-up shots, and nice for her teammates since they would see who you tagged and could either down or hook them for you. Finding the right team-ups to use all of these effects well was really fun, and led to a lot of chill nights spent switching characters over and over, which combined with the other base game changes made 2v8 such an exciting mode to play. As killers. See, the problem with 2v8 is that it was incredibly boring for survivors. Not only was the gameplay mostly identical to 1v4 aside from having more teammates, there was a lot less content. You can't bring items, which is great for the killers because it means that all of the busted ones are out of the question, but sucks for you because it means the only way to use any is to loot chests. And unfortunately, looted items don't come with add-ons. You can't bring perks either. You could only choose between 4 classes, all of which were quite dull and straightforward. Guide boosts repairs, Medic boosts heals, Escapist boosts movement speed, which made it the best one by default, and Scout grants your team aura reading, which made it the second best by default. All of these are pretty uninspired and don't even really help you if you get caught out by both of the killers at once. All you could really do was sit on gens, run around for unhooks, get sandwiched by the 2 killers and instantly die, then wait for someone to rescue you. Pretty dull stuff. And ironically, since there weren't that many killers to pick from, that made Survivor even more boring since there was very little variety, with it being very common to see the same killers over and over again. And of course, because Survivor was so boring, not that many people actually queued for it. Most players were chomping at the bit to play killer instead, because it was the newest and most exciting way to play DBD in ages. There was never a time before this where you could play killer with a friend, give callouts, or use your power in cooperative ways like this.
Yo, I found a goon. I need cover fire.
Sure, it would have been nice if the queue times were faster, but the fact that people still enjoyed the mode enough to endure those long queue times should have been considered a massive success from behavior's point of view. Overall, for a version 1, which was essentially a public beta, this mode was still fantastic and had a lot of promise behind it. Survivor obviously needed a lot of improvement, but there was still potential here. I was actually quite sad to see this mode go the first time around, but I was really excited to imagine what the next variation could look like. Unfortunately, it sucked ass. 2v8 V2 released a few short months after the first one, and almost completely overhauled the mode. The most notable downgrade was that killers were changed to now pick survivors up and awkwardly hook the survivor on nothing before teleporting them to a cage. This change was intended to allow flashlights to be more useful in the mode by letting you rescue teammates before they get hooked. And this makes sense. Flashlight saves make for good content slop after all, but this change didn't really improve Survivor as much as it just made killer more annoying.
No way they still get hooked. You're fucking troll.
The previous system of just banishing survivors to cages was so snappy and quick that there was no reason not to do it, and because there was no reason not to do it, there was no reason to slug, which meant survivors could go to their cages in peace, get rescued, and eventually heal without the killers even knowing where they are. But now, the snappiness of caging survivors is gone, replaced with an awkward and sluggish animation that I usually don't even want to do. And because I don't want to do it, I'm more likely to just slug and fish for a few more hits, to save me the time and potential risk of of getting flashlight or pallet saved. And that's another thing too with this change. You're so vulnerable now if a survivor dies under one of the millions of pallets on each 2v8 map, but we can talk more about those in a minute. Let's finish up the rest of the gameplay changes first. After this update, cages no longer teleport if a survivor and killer are nearby at the same time. And this one, I literally don't understand. Behavior. Rescuing a survivor from a cage in front of the killer is a bad thing. That's the whole point of cages. They're meant to be hard for the killers to find and harder for the killers to defend. And that's balanced out by the fact that survivors don't really have any defense coming out of them. All they get is 10 seconds of endurance and haste, which isn't really hard for the killers to just eat through or ignore in this mode. The previous system was better because if you ran to the unhook as a survivor and a killer found you, you could just loop them around the cage and it would go somewhere safer, allowing someone else to get the rescue without immediately killing the person inside. But with this change, as long as someone is nearby, even if they're in the dying state, the killers get a free pass to just camp the survivor to death by body blocking the front of the cage, with the only risk being that they'll get attacked by ghosts! Anyway, the next batch of changes were targeted at generators. In Behavior's humble opinion, games in 2v8 snowballed too quickly depending on what side was doing well early on, so they tried something a bit experimental and made generator speeds dynamic, with each cage state increasing repair speeds by 2.5% and each completed gen decreasing them by 5%. And this may come as a shock, but I don't like this change. See, in a 2v8 game, survivors need to repair 8 of the 13 available generators in order to win, and killers need to cage all 8 survivors up to 3 times to kill them, totaling 24 cage states. If the 2 killers play nicely and don't kill anyone until everyone has been caged twice, that means they can get up to 16 cages before anyone is dead, and even a few more before a significant dent is made in the survivor player count. Those 16 cages will end up increasing everyone's repair speed by 40%, and of course that bonus will go down each time gens are completed, but it'll still be enough to where if you're playing well as a killer team, survivors will spend most of the game with faster repair speeds, meaning you might still just lose by being unable to keep up. And sometimes the opposite is true. If the killers play poorly and don't get many hooks for most of the game, it might become impossible to finish the last few gens, due to them taking twice as long to repair and regressing twice as fast when kicked, which will give the killers plenty of time to snowball into a crazy comeback that, in all honesty, they didn't earn. The main flaw with a lot of these 2v8 changes is that Behavior has tried to slow the game down to match the pace of 1v4 to an extent, which is antithetical to their original goal of 2v8 being a more fast-paced and action-focused mode. As game designers, you don't want to punish someone for doing their objective, so why is that what they keep doing with these changes? Making caging slower and more risky, speeding up gens whenever you cage, and then slowing them down whenever survivors finish them? None of these are changes that make the mode more fun. They're just making my objective feel like a chore. But we'll quickly move on from that and talk about the class system rework, which was tragically another huge misstep from Behavior. To continue my previous points, we'll talk about the survivor classes first. While the class names and ideas mostly stayed the same, they were heavily retooled and made more uniform. The previous 4 random skills each class came with were reduced to just 3, with each being tied to a simplified category: a passive innate skill, an aura skill, and an unlockable skill, which is gained after being caged. Notable changes include Medic being reworked to have an AoE heal that can be used to expedite resets or instantly heal and chase if you have another Medic teammate near you. Escapist was reworked to be the only class with the option to self-heal after being caged, and Scout was reworked to have the ability to not only reset dropped pallets, but rebuild broken pallets completely. And that last one is the most problematic part of this update to me because of what I talked about earlier. If a survivor goes down under a pallet in 2v8, the killers are now so much more vulnerable than before, since one of the 7 other players in the match can drop a pallet on you to prevent the cage from happening. 2v8 maps are already filled with, I don't know, like 3 dozen pallets each, which is already a daunting amount for killers to get through in the first place, but with multiple scouts in play, you will almost never run out of pallets, and most killers won't even be able to rely on the old element of surprise either, since scouts can permanently provide wall hacks to everyone without the killers even knowing. This class alone makes survivors so much stronger in this mode because it practically guarantees everyone can make it to a safe place at every moment of the game. Aside from that though, the new unlockable skills are for the most part pretty harmless, but they're also another mechanic that discourages killers from caging in this mode, and I don't even really understand what the logic for these were. It's obvious that the intention was to discourage tunneling, but I think these effects utterly fail at that goal. Take for example the Medic's unlockable skill that removes your scratch marks. That doesn't protect you from tunneling, it just makes later chases in the game slightly more aggravating. All these unlockable skills do is remove abilities from the killers the more they cage survivors, which kinda stinks because 2v8 killers don't really gain anything from caging survivors in the first place. And to round off my issues with 2v8 v2, let's briefly talk about killer classes and how they killed any semblance of variety killer had in this mode. The previous team skills that were tied to each killer are now gone, replaced with 4 homogeneous and samey killer classes instead. Say goodbye to pairing killers together for unique synergies, and say hello to random haste effects. These new killer skills are so bare bones and confusing that I don't feel particularly strongly about running any of them, and I barely notice the effects until they happen to benefit me. Oh, and get this, not one of these classes actually gives you a single benefit when caging. Basically, all of them are just passives that you get by existing or being near your teammate. And it's a bit of a petty complaint, but I really do not like how this class system looks on the HUD. Having only 2 skills visible in-game looks so awkward and bad. And man, some killers really got the short end of the stick because of this class rework. Trapper's previous sprint burst effect when setting traps is gone, so he's a lot slower at setting up traps and can't help out his teammate when he's nearby either. Huntress lost her ore reading hatchets, making it a lot harder for her teammate to tell who just got tagged and where, and they even removed her throw cooldown buff for some reason, so she can't manage groups of multiple survivors as well as she previously could. Meanwhile, Hillbilly got buffed so his chainsaw can insta-down again, meaning he's now one of the best killers for slugging, shredding pallets, and getting around the map quickly all by himself, no teamwork required. This anti-team mentality also extended to the new killers added in this variation: Blight, Spirit, and Deathslinger. And I mean, what a way to get survivors to play 2v8, right? Add 3 of the most obnoxious killers to verse, all at once. 2 of these killers have little to no team synergy at all, they're just strong. And the only one that does have team synergy has a little bit too much? See, in 1v4, Deathslinger is normally balanced around the fact that his first shot is a guaranteed injury if it connects, and the second shot he has to work a little harder for since he has to reel around pallets and obstacles. This reeling mechanic already feels terrible for survivors to play against normally, since the initial shot is basically unreactable, and the reeling effect restricts your camera movement so much that it's basically a cutscene. But 2v8 makes this even worse, because if the other killer is nearby while you're being reeled in, you're instantly dead, and this makes Slinger just flat out not fun for survivors to deal with. It's fun for the killers for sure, but I mean, you know. And let's talk about the other 2 real quick, because I genuinely don't understand what the idea was here. Adding Blight makes sense since he's always been very popular, but instead of giving him something akin to his 2 speed add-ons that everyone uses, they instead opted to just give him a flat speed increase instead, which combined with the added turn rate and the Brute class to break pallets faster, makes the killer quite easy to play while being good at a lot of things. Which was a choice. And then there's Spirit. Not only is playing against this killer horrible by default, she also got some of the biggest buffs in this mode compared to anyone else, with souped up speed, incredibly fast recharge, and way longer phasing duration. But all of that barely matters because she also feels horrible to play in this mode, because you have to listen for the faintest little sound survivors make while a barrage of piano stings, chainsaw sounds, and screams play in the background from you. And that about concludes all of the more objective reasons why 2v8 v2 was a massive downgrade from the first. The only good thing I could really say about this update was the fact that behavior really went all out and changed a lot about the mode in a small amount of time, which gave me hope that subsequent 2v8 iterations would follow suit and show a lot of change in accordance with feedback. But if I may make a bit of an emotional argument for a second, there was one more addition in this iteration of 2v8 that really soured the experience. That being Dead Dog Saloon.
Oh my god, bro.
This map features one of the most hideous color schemes in the game, pairs it with foliage that survivors can use to hide their model and scratch marks with, and then also dares to have the worst map size, layout, and palette setups I have ever seen in my life. This map only barely works in 1v4 because its incredibly safe main building is balanced out by being relatively far from the rest of the safe tiles on the map, but this version throws that philosophy out. So you have one of the most busted and linear main buildings in the game, plopped in the middle of a giant playable space that is filled to the brim with pallets everywhere that are sometimes double pallets, and sometimes god palettes. And then it also turns one of the map's regular structures, a strong TNL wall, into a double god palette tile by adding 2 pallets next to each window with a breakable wall in the middle to make it even stronger. And then throws that same godlike structure into 3 different corners of the map. Oh yeah, they also added breakable walls back to this mode in all the new maps for this iteration, which means all of the DDS tiles that have them are god loops until you break them, just like in 1v4. They weren't in any of the maps in the first iteration, so I don't know why they're randomly here now. The gen spread is also just abysmal for killers, with them often being tucked into extremely safe structures such as that TL I mentioned earlier, and sometimes tucked into extremely safe structures such as main building, up a flight of stairs. This map is genuinely abominable, and it hasn't been fun a single time I've played on it. But with that rant aside, all that's left to talk about is the big thing. Did all of these changes improve queue times? No. Killer queue times were still long as hell, with survivors still being instant. And I'm pretty sure this little rant outlined why, right? Sure, the survivor class system overhaul was big and exciting, but all of the other changes really only made survivor easier, not more fun. Meanwhile, on the killer end, all of the changes that made killer more frustrating were still not enough to deter how fun and novel playing with 2 killers is. And that's the thing people are looking forward to when this mode comes around. Novelty. And to be honest, there isn't really enough of that on Survivor. But once this version of 2v8 was over, all we could do was hope that the next version would actually improve things a bit. Welcome to Dead by Daylight Resident Evil 2v8 v3, featuring Dante from the Devil. So yeah, the third iteration of 2v8 was pretty light on changes because its primary gimmick was that it was licensed crossover slop. Everything I said about 2v8 v2 also applies here, but we of course also have Nemesis, Wesker, and RPD as new additions. But also, weirdly, we got Legion. I literally do not understand how behavior keeps making each version of 2v8 worse. Listen, I get it. Legion has the hunk skin, so they wanted to tie off the collab by letting you play as all 3 available Resident Evil killers, but why? Why add Legion? Legion is the most linear killer in this game. You hit the frenzy button and commence the cutscene of hitting survivors. That's it. And in this mode, that's really all you need. Because of how easy it is for Legion to spread injuries and stop survivors from doing anything by making them mend, whoever your teammate is can have a field day picking off easy targets, especially since they'll get aura reading on everyone that you start chase with. Oh, and get this, Legion has no trouble finding survivors who are being rescued from cages with their killer instinct, meaning they can easily tunnel directly out of the cage with basically nothing the survivors can do about it. And of course, because Legion is incredibly easy and does so much in 2v8, they're incredibly popular and you probably can't go 5 survivor games without seeing them. Just like in 1v4, Nemesis is a total disappointment. 80% of his skills are specifically buffs to zombies, with his tentacle barely feeling any different than normal to use. And because maps are supersized, those zombie buffs aren't going to do anything. They rarely have any effect on 2v8 matches, so I don't know why they're here. Also, another fun thing about Nemesis is that he has anti-synergy with Wesker, who woke up one day and randomly decided to be the best killer in 2v8. While other killers basically get a random mix of some of their add-ons thrown together for their innate skills, Wesker was blessed with several insane buffs that he's never seen before, not even through add-ons. His windup and vault are faster, both of which lower his difficulty and increase his lethality by a ton. His cooldown for missed attacks is way shorter, meaning that he can actually cut you off even if he misses and use his power for distance in ways that were previously not possible for him. And most notably, he has an entire extra bound to use, giving him 3 in total. And this is all on top of the fact that his power applies a passive infection that survivors have to cleanse and stun survivors in place for so long on every grab that you can set up insta-downs with your teammate even better than Deathslinger can. This is what Deathslinger comes with. Oh, and about the anti-synergy I mentioned. When playing against Nemesis and Wesker at the same time, their power spawns one single cure instead of the 2 different ones they normally come with. Not only do these cures remove both infections at once, there's also a lot more of them than normal. So if you for some reason want to play Nemesis, you better hope your teammate isn't also playing the literal best killer in the mode, because otherwise you'll spend way more of the game with basically no lethality. And let's not forget that this time around you have the privilege of playing on RPD. You know, the map where you can run down the hallway. I honestly have no idea what made them think that this was going to get people to play Survivor. Oh, wait, they didn't think they were going to get people to play Survivor, because this time around, they implemented bots to fill the queues. Instead of looking for lobbies of 8 players, games would now start with only 6, with the remaining 2 slots being reserved for bots if nobody else joined the lobby. This wouldn't have been a bad idea if it affected queue times in any meaningful way, but predictably and unfortunately, it did not. Killers still had to sit in queue for over 20 minutes to get a single game, but now their game quality was also significantly worse than before. Survivor bots are generally not fun to chase due to their supernatural awareness and near immediate flashlight blinds, and they're also unfun to play with as survivors because they're just bad teammates.
Bro, that's a bot AFK with 3 crows? What? Hello?
They can do that.
I'm saying.
Thankfully though, this feature was quickly abandoned midway through this run of 2v8, but man, those first few days in the mode were miserable. Aside from all that though, there was one more unique feature of this 2v8 run: the yellow and green herbs scattered around the maps. Survivors could pick up a green herb to instantly heal a health state, or a yellow herb to instantly remove a cage state from themselves. Meanwhile, killers could destroy the herbs to gain a brief bit of haste. I actually liked this gimmick. It helped make map exploration a bit more fun, and these were always nice to find. I gotta say, this was the first time I was kinda glad this 2v8 was coming to an end though, and I started to wonder if maybe it was time to maybe cut back on a few things. It's not like 2v8 has a lot of content, but a lot of the additions were already becoming very questionable. Adding multiple killers each time the mode comes around, meanwhile Survivor still has to use the same 4 classes every time, is almost certainly not helping the queue times, especially since the new killers aren't really improving the experience. It also started to feel like Behavior wasn't even trying with this mode anymore, since all they do now is copy-paste the killer's power icon instead of making custom ones like they did for the first iteration. And because killers don't come with team skills anymore, a lot of them don't even have anything actually new for this mode, just a few buffs for the power added base kit and pretty much nothing else. I really hope Behavior doesn't plan on adding every killer to 2v8 at some point, because frankly, not all killers belong here. The main gimmick of this mode is supposed to be its fast-paced nature, and with how many killers are so reliant on slowing the game down or have powers that are very tightly balanced for that 4v1, adding another killer to help them out and 4 more survivors to torture sounds awful. Seriously, could you imagine a killer like Twins running around with another killer giving Victor info, injuries, and picking up survivors for him? Give me a break. Besides, if every killer is in 2v8, then there's less reasons for people to play 1v4, and if these modes are going to coexist in the future, they need to be completely unique experiences from one another. But what do I know? Maybe 2v8v4 will improve things. Same story, 3 months later. 2v8v4 arrived and existed for a brief period of DBD's history. This version was the lightest on content so far, only including 2 new killers, Oni and Ghostface. The only base gameplay change this time is that there's a new hooking animation. Instead of just awkwardly throwing the survivor in the air, the entity now drops from a portal and acts as a hook before dragging the survivor away. I don't have much to say about this. It looks cool, but it's just confirmation that we're likely never returning to the much better system that we started with. Whatever. Ghostface is fine. He doesn't have the most incredible stats in this mode, but he fits in nicely. His ability to mark survivors from a distance while his teammate goes in for the kill is one of the more obvious team abilities. He does get a nice buff for himself too, gaining 10% haste whenever he's in stealth. It's not crazy mobility like Wraith or anything, but it does mean that you can actually competently chase and ambush survivors using a much faster lunge attack. And Oni is also fine. Despite the fact that Legion is still here for some reason and can keep survivors injured for most of the game, this doesn't mean that you spend all game in power. Firstly, Oni doesn't gain any progress towards his power when downing survivors, only injuring, so your teammate doing that for you can actually hurt more than it helps. And secondly, Blood Orbs have a hard cap of 100, so even if all 8 survivors are walking around the map injured, all of the Blood Orbs they leave behind are going to be spread across the map in smaller clumps instead of pooling up in one area. And since you don't have any power outside of Blood Fury, I don't really see a reason to play him most of the time. He'll kinda just end up waddling around the map doing nothing if he doesn't get a lucky hit on anyone, and even when he does get his power up, he doesn't get any bonus duration and he can't cage anyone without ending it, just like in 1v4. So honestly, he may not be the worst killer in this mode, but he definitely feels the worst to play by a long shot. DDS is also still here for some reason, yay. But gone are the herbs from the last 2v8. Instead, survivors get access to a new item, fog crystals. These things. Oh man. Despite all my complaints about 2v8 in this video, I still go out of my way to play it whenever it's available because I truly think it's a fun mode. But these things really began to test my patience. Trying to chase anyone when they have these is basically impossible. The radius is big enough that it can completely mask where the survivor goes. But the worst part is, these things are 1 part smoke bomb and 1 part flashbang. It's so obnoxious to play killer and constantly have my screen turn completely white as I'm engulfed in fog. And alongside the deafening sound effect they have, it makes them actually headache-inducing. Total nuisance of an item. I never liked them in the Halloween event, I couldn't stand them in this version of 2v8, and I don't like the new 1v4 fog vials for the same reason. They're just anti-fun, and only serve the purpose of discouraging interaction between the survivor and killers, which is not what 2v8 should be about. Oh, and of course, I mean ranged killers, so these items basically shut off my power by removing my vision. Neat. There really ain't much to say about this iteration though. I played it lots, but there really weren't enough differences to make it feel like the 3-month gap between releases was warranted. Also, online, it seemed like a lot less people were getting excited about 2v8, which was pretty sad. But hey, we got a 3rd skill on the HUD now instead of 2. Seeing the exact same power icon in 2 different spots on the HUD, that definitely eases things. I don't know, you guys. 2v8 could be great, and I thought it already was at its inception, but all of the disappointing changes in the 2nd iteration, followed by all the lackluster iterations we've gotten since, have made it way less exciting. And speaking of, let's just go over it now. 2v8 v5 is here, and this one is truly the most none-pizza left beef iteration yet. In terms of gameplay changes, there are no new killers this time, which I'm okay with. After the last iteration, we had 13 killers and 78 total killer combinations that were possible. I think taking a break from adding new killers would have been a perfect excuse to rebalance some of the old ones or add in some new classes and items so that Survivor could be a bit more interesting. But instead, of course, we got a whole lot of nothing. Guide got reworked, with its class skill now allowing you to set traps on generators that explode when the killer kicks them. Yay for that, so much fun. Escapist was buffed, letting you manually control the haste boost with a button press, which makes it have basically no counterplay anymore. Anyone else remember old Dead Hard? Fog crystals got replaced with fog vials, effectively nerfing them, which is fine. Legion got nerfed, or at least their most annoying playstyle did. Oh well. I'm not really sure why Behavior wants to make this killer work in this mode, when in reality they should have been removed after 2v8 v3, but sure, maybe this will make them less popular. Also, weirdly, the Shadow class got nerfed. If you don't know, this class would give you the undetectable effect whenever you went near your teammate. This effect would last indefinitely until you hit someone, with it then being transferred to your teammate for a short time and being put on cooldown. This has now been reworked so that you instead only gain this undetectable effect after caging a survivor. My god, they actually did it. They finally gave killers a bonus for caging survivors. With this one class. But aside from gameplay, the biggest shakeup to 2v8 this time around is the new queue system. When queuing for killer games, you now have the option to play a survivor match while you wait, with your spot in the queue being reserved once your match is over. The goal is obviously to relieve the atrocious killer queue times, but I can't really vouch for how well this will work because personally, I'm not going to be using it. Listen, I don't know what to tell you guys, I just don't mind the queue times. I never did. I can work on script writing and video editing for about 25 minutes, then have a short 5 to 10 minute break to play the game. It's peak. Pretty sure there's a routine based on that very concept too. Regardless, I can't really imagine this will work too well. If it gets the queue times down to like 10 minutes instead of 20, then that's great, but this can't ever be the method to get queue times down to acceptable levels. By this system's very nature, you will be signing up to play a survivor game that will be at least a few minutes in length, so if queue times are shorter than one survivor game, there won't be a reason to use the system. But because the system reserves your spot in the queue as well, I doubt this will improve queue times for the people not using the system, because everyone who does will be hogging any potential spots until their games are over. And that's kind of the main issue with the play while you wait system. It's a nice quality of life feature, but it is definitely not a permanent solution. 2v8's long killer queues are not a problem that can be fixed with a novelty gimmick like this. They are a symptom of the mode's much bigger issues, and I hope this video put a spotlight on some of them for you. I really want to see this mode thrive and be exciting to play, but there's just so many missteps being taken with it that make me sad. With the dwindling quality of regular 1v4 DBD and other event modes, it'd be really nice to see 2v8 doing well so I could at least believe that Behavior was putting their effort somewhere. But I can only handle so many easily avoidable disappointments from this mode before I have to say something. So if I could maybe give a few ideas to push the mode back in the right direction, I guess it'd be the following few things. 1. Remove Legion. This killer obviously does not belong here. 2. Revert most of the 2v8 v2 changes, including the dynamic gen speed, killer-specific team skills, and stomping instead of picking up from the floor. 3. Nerf Wesker. If I could do anything, I would just remove his infection and grab entirely, and make him do his regular hit animation on contact instead. 4. Add more survivor classes. Killers already have plenty of variety, so please add some to survivor as well. And 5. Give 2v8 its own unique item pool. The Fog Crystal, as much as it sucked, was at least something that differentiated Survivor in 2v8 from 1v4. I think most items don't really work in this mode because without add-ons, they have such little charge or purpose. Need I remind you that in 2v8v1, flashlights were so worthless that they had to nerf Killer as a whole just to try and make them do something? So why not make some new items that are built specifically for 2v8? Hell, you could even repurpose some of the strongest Survivor add-ons from 1v4 into their own items here. Replace medkits with syringes that passively heal you, or a styptic agent that gives you endurance. Replace toolboxes with brand new parts that grant instant permanent gen progress, and remove those add-ons from 1v4 since they don't really fit properly there either. That would also be something that makes 2v8 Survivor a completely fresh and unique experience in the same way that playing with 2 killers is. And that's all I've got. Be sure to let me know what you all think of 2v8 as well. I haven't really played that much Survivor in the mode, so I'm curious. Was my assessment accurate? Have the updates actually made the experience any better or worse than the original 2v8? Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Good night!